I'm 50-50 on whether this will be like a specific title in the future. I think it is a skill set for sure. And it's a skill set of being able to, I consider it tinkering. It's not like, how do you finagle the prompt? How do you build this in a way? How do you try and check? It's like the whole process of tinkering for anything as opposed to a research process.
The following is a conversation with Jared Zoneraich. Jared is the co-founder of PromptLayer, a collaborative platform for teams and individuals to track, debug, and explore their language model application requests. I reached out to Jared to find out more about the common denominator that all language model practitioners share: the prompt. I dug in with Jared to understand his take on how developers should invest in the meta skill of prompt engineering and to understand how PromptLayer is strategically participating in the future of prompt management and collaboration. My name is Greg Camrad, and my goal is to take a look at behind the scenes of the AI space to enable you to participate, whether you're an investor, founder, or indie developer. Enjoy. Jared, thank you very much for joining me for a conversation today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So to kick it off, can you tell us and the viewers a little bit about what PromptLayer is?
So PromptLayer is a platform for data-driven prompt engineering. So it's a one line of code that you can set up in less than 5 minutes, gives you a dashboard of all your logs, lets you go through those logs visually, lets you save all your prompt templates, lets you see which prompt templates are working better than the others, cost, and we got cool analytics, get to see which users are using your platform more, how they're using your platform. Just in general, how do you make prompt engineering into a more scientific, rigorous, data-driven process?
Nice. That's awesome. And who's the persona you say you're working towards? Is it more the indie developers or in production B2B?
So we have two groups of users, I'd say. One big group are the hackers, indie developers, whatever you want to call it. This is like, I think this is how we started. This is kind of our bread and butter, just community driven. And then we're also been indexing a lot on teams using our product. So we have a lot of features for kind of the less technical stakeholder on the team or the PM to come in and change the prompts and work with the engineers hand in hand. So we have a few teams that fit that persona. So it's kind of the both, but both personas start with this observability layer and like the logging.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's interesting. And so can you take us along the journey of PromptLayer so far? So I saw y'all did your launch tweet, I think it was January 5th, and that's like years in the AI timeframe. So what's the journey been like from January up until now?
Yeah, it's been like 6 months almost. That's crazy. Yeah, so we launched PromptLayer. We originally built the product kind of just for ourselves. We were working on some side projects, and we just wanted a log to be able to kind of build it. Like it got to that last mile where like I can't finish this product without being able to see all the logs. So we're like, okay, let's just build it for ourselves. Let's release it for the community, see if it helps other people. And we launched it in January, beginning of January, and kind of that tweet kind of took off. And we're like, oh, okay, so other people find this useful too. Yeah, let's dive into this. So we're like, okay, this is the product we're working on now. And since then, we've launched a few big feature updates. We're a small team. It's like me and my co-founder who's actually sitting next to me, John. But we've launched a lot of stuff. Prompt Registry was our first big launch, which is kind of our CMS of prompt templates. From that like all the features that come with that, so like tracking the prompt templates. And then we had an analytics page, which was a big launch. Recently, we started supporting Anthropic. Just been shipping a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about your investment strategy or taking on money strategy? What's that looked like?
PromptLayer as a company actually started almost like a little over a year and a half ago, actually. And we began with a slightly different product, which was kind of more in the data science orchestration world. I like to say that we're in the LLM orchestration world. We're kind of the layer on top of the LLM. But yeah, we raised a little bit of a pre-seed from some really cool investors back then, and then added a few more recently, actually, to help us with our first hire. So like we're hiring a founding engineer now. So if anybody's watching this and wants to join a really cool New York team,
Nice. And what kind of skill set are you looking for that founding engineer?
building fast, some experience with working on fast teams, working with high-powered teams, and just kind of like a hunger. This is going to be someone who's going to have a lot of ownership over a lot of our product, and someone who's excited to make these decisions.
Yeah, that's very cool. And as we think about the future of your product, what does the next, 6 to 12 months look like for PromptLayer?
It's hard to have a crystal ball for anything in AI. There's so many things changing, but right now, the big things on the roadmap kind of, I mean, at the very high level, we want to build, make the product better for the two main groups, the hackers and the teams. I think we're going to be focusing a lot on the teams and kind of, there's this thing we discovered when we launched the prompt registry about these like non-technical stakeholders and kind of diving deeper into that and allowing teams to better work on their LLMs and kind of building more stuff around that. We're actually building a new page now that'll help a lot with testing out prompts and running unit tests against them and back testing and that sort of thing. And so kind of 6 to 12 months is just chugging along, building the product, making it better, and kind of leveling it up.
Yeah, absolutely. And so there has been a ton of news that has come out about AI just in general. And folks will often say at the end of the week, man, I'm tired from just everything that just came out in the first place. And being a casual observer in the space, I get tired. What's it like being a founder in the AI space and dealing with all the news that comes in? How do you filter out noise and keep the signal high for yourself?
Yeah, January, February, March, totally empathize there. That was pretty crazy. There's so much new stuff every week. I think it's died down a little bit. There's still a lot of new stuff, but you just have to, there's a lot of noise. You just have to not take so much of it so seriously. But I don't know. I haven't solved that completely myself. I'm still looking at all these things. But the one thing I think from the company perspective, as opposed to the individual perspective, is we're rooted very heavily on what current users and what like actual prompt engineers or actual engineers want. So as opposed to like, I could tell you a list of like 30 really cool things we want to build, but until we get definite signal from people, that like it's hard to prioritize it up in the list and bubble it up because there's a lot of noise about people talking things, but also sometimes you got to jump into the wave of the noise and that helps like find users. So it's a balancing act.
Totally. And, tell me more about what you've seen around prompt engineers in the wild. Now, are there actually people on an engineering team with the title prompt engineer, or is it usually going to be a skill set of somebody on the team that does something else?
There's a few notable companies like Scale and Anthropic that have prompt engineers, but in general, I'm 50-50 on whether this will be like a specific title in the future. I think it is a skill set for sure, and it's a skill set of being able to, I consider it tinkering. It's not like, how do you finagle the prompt? How do you build this in a way? How do you try and check? It's like the whole process of tinkering for anything as opposed to a research process, in my opinion, at least. And it doesn't fall into one category. Like it's not just it's not just engineers who could do this well. Not all engineers can do this well, but it's also PMs. Some PMs are really good at it. Some non-technical people are very good at it. So it really goes down the line. It varies, and I think it's an important skill set, and it's going to become big. I could see PMs owning it personally.
Sure. Yeah, I could see that too. And so then on that realm, what are the dynamics you're seeing about how teams are interacting with prompts? Is it kind of like a Google Docs and you have a shared repository and everybody's collaborating in there? Or what does the iteration process look like?
Before they use PromptLayer, it's Google Docs, Airtable, Postgres, something like that. And then, I mean, that's a big thing we're thinking about. How do we improve these workflows? How do we let teams work on prompts and build these things together? So in our ideal, how it's working is because of this prompt registry type CMS, we kind of separate the end blockers and the prompt engineering blockers. So when you build something in the dev phase, when you're kind of building version one, you're building it a lot locally. You're testing like your few pet examples on the prompt and see how it's doing. And the day you launch it and ship it live, and we've seen this from a few of our customers, the day you ship this live, you're going to discover so many edge cases, and you don't want to be blocked on asking the eng team to do another deploy on it. So that's kind of why I think building these workflows around teams is very important, and why we're kind of feel that it should be separated into one area to edit the prompts, and that like doesn't require eng deploys, and then you can kind of swap them out in production and see what's doing what. And then next steps are A/B testing. We don't have that yet, but kind of we enable it, but some first party A/B testing, some ways to maybe you're going to be deciding at runtime some prompts and some models are going to be better for some things. And maybe you have a chatbot and the user is asking about code and you're going to throw it to GPT-4. But if the user is asking to summarize a long article, maybe you're going to give it to Anthropic with the bigger context window. And I think these are all phase two of prompt engineering. A lot of people are at phase one of just, I want to get something out there. And then kind of what we're trying to help with is how do you get it out? Like making a Twitter demo is easy, but making a product that people use and love is hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And so even on the topic of prompts in general here, I've seen difference of opinions on the future of prompting in general. Some folks say, no, we're always going to have to give instructions to language models. So prompting will always be around. Some folks say, nah, language models are going to be so intelligent that it's going to be that we won't need prompts. What's your view on it?
The most intelligent things we know of today are humans, right? And we're prompting each other right now. So I don't see you at the end of the day, even in the most advanced LLM that's maybe way smarter than a human, you you need to decide which task to do at the very minimum. And there you always need a starting point. So there's always going to be different starting points you can choose. There's also going to be always going to be different models with different latency requirements and different cost requirements. And because prompting is not just prompt engineering at the core is writing the prompt, but there are a lot of other variables, and you're going to have to figure those out.
Could you expand more on those other variables? I think that'd be an interesting viewpoint.
I mean, what model are you running it on? 3.5 for Anthropic's Claude, open source models. Maybe people are going to fine tune their own. People are doing that now, but maybe it'll be even bigger. Those are other variables also. I mean, like temperature, p-value, that sort of thing. There's also other variables like which user segment are you running this on? Which prompt are you actually using? What variables are you injecting into it? Like, there's a lot of finagling here, and yes, I think a lot will get much easier as LLMs improve, but I think there's always going to be tweaking.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, so who are some of the prominent prompt engineers, if you will, that you like to follow in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a funny question because I think everyone, like, there's no certificate of prompt engineering, right? So I think it's just, I like to follow the builders, kind of the people releasing products. I mean, this might be a little spicier, but there's a lot of people talking about prompting and stuff who are not actually building. And there's a lot of people who are not even like close to building and talking about it. And yeah, I weight much more highly people who are shipping the products. And that's why, like, I think you mentioned earlier, like this whole thing about everything's moving fast and it being scary. When you're building, it's so much less scary because it's like, oh, we get to move fast too. Oh, we get to define the best practices with the community as opposed to kind of being in this slow moving space where you need to, oh, okay, we build the product and then we got to perfect it and then it's not quite time yet. Now everything's just, let's go, let's go.
Sure, sure. And so then on the building standpoint, some developers have been critical of wanting to pass more information to other third parties before it actually went to the LLM. And so how do you feel about, or I guess what's your response to developers who say that?
Well, for us, we don't sit between your call with OpenAI. What's going on in the background is you send a request to OpenAI or Anthropic or whatever, you get the response and then you log it to PromptLayer. So I mean, there's decent reason why people are critical of that because most LLM applications, latency is vitally important. You don't want the user to get bored, and we don't want to add latency. You don't want to add another failure point. Obviously, we have great uptime, but you don't want to add another system that will take everything down.
Yeah, absolutely. What's one belief that you have on prompt engineering that may be controversial or maybe other people don't agree with you on?
I think there's a lot of efforts and like papers around, oh, if you do this, we've studied this way is the best way to do a prompt, and like because inside the LLM, this is what it's doing. I think more and more as these things get even more complicated, everything you just need to look at it like a black box. Like being technical is not necessarily going to give you an edge in writing a prompt because at the end of the day, it's just an input and an output, and that's all you have and all you should be working with. And there's ways, like today people say, oh, if you're nicer, because Stack Overflow questions that are nicer get better answers, then you get a better answer from the LLM. And maybe that might be true today, but as these things get better and less biased, just look at it like a black box and just kind of YOLO it.
Just YOLO it. Yeah. So you had said you may not have to be technical to write a good prompt for it. So what are the skills you think somebody needs or they should improve to get better at prompting?
Just playing around, just practicing, just open Playground and try to do something. ChatGPT too, but like Playground, I think gives you a much better view of what's going on behind the scenes than ChatGPT because ChatGPT is like wrapping it, with different prompts. But just practice. It's like because I think it's a black box, because I think it's a tinkering heavy sport or art. The more you do it, the more of a sense and a feel you have for what the inputs change to the output. You're training your own neural net, right?
Yeah, totally. Totally. Is there a playground of where people can go and play around to practice that prompts?
Like the OpenAI playground, just like playground.openai.com.
Sure, but no like feedback loop where it's like, hey, this is how you could have improved your prompt to get better.
There is like what does better mean? There's not necessarily a better prompt. Like we did a little experiment with actually helping using an LLM to help you improve your prompts. And I think the jury's still out whether you could do that well. And even if you can, right now at least, there's not a concept of a better prompt. It's just better at what the task you're doing for. So try, yeah, just playing around.
That's an interesting thought exercise to see if you had a few almost like eval examples and the human was required to insert the prompt in order to match the output as closely as possible.
If I was designing a prompt engineering course, that's probably what it would be. I did a little workshop on like prompt engineering 101, and that was what it was like. Hey, I want to take this email and write a response. Oh, I want my response to be angry. What do I do? Oh, let's put some few shot examples in it. How does that change it? And try to get to a good output.
Totally. Well, so let's say a new developer comes to you and they're like, I know nothing about prompting. What are the first couple learning resources you send their way?
That's a hard one. There's no resources that have stood the test of time yet, right? And I honestly tell them to play around with the playground. And honestly, that and just, I have to say, OpenAI's docs are fantastic. So that's it, like, just go to their docs, just read from it from the start, and play around, like follow along with the examples. Like, I mean, everybody's different, but if I'm learning, I'm not going to learn so well if I'm just reading it. I have to be doing it. But also, I would say actually, Stephen Wolfram wrote a few articles on LMs and how ChatGPT works behind the scenes. And they're extremely well written to be able to understand from a less technical perspective. Like they're very technical articles, but they're very, very clearly written. So I'd also recommend those.
Nice. Awesome. You're making me think of another thing. The latency part of your product has been fun to follow along with and check how responsive these models have been. Do you have any future plans for the latency side of the house?
Well, we want to add Anthropic there. That's mostly so the graph we have to show like the latency of different models. That's mostly just to help a few customers who asked us like, oh, is GPT being slow for you too? Or is it just like my end, something's wrong? So it's mostly to answer that question. I think that there's a lot of improvements we can make to making the y-axis more useful on that. Right now, it's just like a total average. But besides adding Anthropic, nothing in the very near future there, unfortunately. Actually, there's one thing we want to add now that I think about it. Kind of like benchmarks. I'm writing a prompt. How are other people writing similar prompts? What scores are they getting? So that's a while out, I think. That's kind of like a MailChimp style. It's just an idea phase right now, but that would be a cool thing.
Yeah, that always just gets so tough, like you said, on the eval piece, because what is good? And everybody's task is different. So you're not going to have a standardized one here.
Yeah, so maybe we'll never do it, but
yeah. Well, you'll see how it goes. So then let's take a step back away from prompting and look at more just the journey of what PromptLayer has been through so far. Now, I know when you found a company and you get some popularity with it, you might have some serendipitous moments. So somebody who you've looked up to may reach out to you, or some people have, shown some attention your way that you may not have expected because they're, minor celebrities or whatever it may be. What's one serendipitous moment that's happened to you on the PromptLayer journey so far?
Well, most of our users came inbound, which is pretty crazy. And like going from a product that we were trying to sell beforehand, it's just such a stark difference. Very cool. But I would say another thing, a funnier one is, so I did a interview with actually Stephen Wolfram about prompt engineering, and I tweeted it, and the tweet got a few views, and then like someone shared it, and like Elon tweeted in commented in the thread or something, and then it just blew up. So that was pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love hearing moments like that. It's always fun for that. What about other companies that you're excited about right now who may be under the radar?
A cool one is Grit. We actually use them to convert our code base to TypeScript from just like standard JavaScript React. So they're doing code refactoring, code like bug fixes. They submit a PR, and like there was very little things we had to fix with the PR. It was really good. So they're doing really cool stuff. Also based in New York, as are we. A lot of New York ones. There's other cool ones. I have another friend in the Gen AI space in New York, Deep Tune. They're doing kind of like podcast dubbing AI. And then also I have a non-AI friend who's also in a similar space called BrainCap. And they're kind of building a network of podcast dubbers. So kind of, I think those are the two key pieces to the puzzle. So that's why I bring them both up. But yeah, there's a lot of cool AI startups, and a lot more than you'd expect in New York.
Interesting. And how's the New York event scene? Do you find yourself, out every night talking to industry folks?
Too many events. That was a big learning. You got to filter out the noise. Events are great. It's a great way to like meet other builders and other people, but there's a lot of noise and a lot of pretty bad events, and a lot of we need less VC run events and more AI startup run events. But yeah, I just kind of have to limit how many you go to these days.
Totally. And I wanted to ask, so after you've been to a bajillion events, you got to find out some filters, like mental filters that you have in order to know, oh, this is worth my time or it's not worth my time. Without getting any specifics, I don't want to get you in trouble here, but when you're looking at an event, what are those factors that you consider?
Who's running it? Is it like merely a VC running it, or is it a VC in partnership with a startup? That kind of changes who's coming. Is it how big of the event? Is it what brand names are associated, what startups are associated with it? Is it like a small dinner? I like the small dinners that are curated. Those are the good VC events I'd go to, but a lot are good too. Like the baseline is not that low. There's some that are not great, but you see a lot of cool people at all these events, and it's like again, we're hiring, so it's worth it to go. We're also looking for more users, so it's also worth it to go. But it's a limit for sure, and it's a hard heuristic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was looking at one of your recent tweets, and you had mentioned that you have no limit for money to spend on books. And so, to borrow one of Tim Ferriss's questions, what's one of the books that you've gifted or recommended the most to people?
Probably something by Nassim Taleb. Probably Anti-Fragile. Maybe Skin in the Game. That's if you ask any of my friends, I don't miss a chance to reference something I learned in a Taleb book.
Yeah, no, that's fun. And then just to wrap it up here, is there any message or piece of advice that you'd want to give to building developers or aspiring entrepreneurs?
Just ship it. That was a big learning from us. Don't spend too long kind of thinking about what the product should be and stuff like that, and like strategizing how you're gonna just ship it. And especially if you're making a developer tool, something engineering facing, engineers don't care unless they can try it out and play with it, and it's a real product. So ship early.
Beautiful. And is there anything you'd like to promote or plug as we close this off here?
Yeah, promptlayer.com, www.promptlayer.com. Check it out. It's a good way. Check it out if you're building LLM apps and you want a better way to observe. Check it out if you're a team and you want all your stakeholders involved and you want to store the data layer of analytics. And then also, you're based in New York, and we come say hi if you're nearby. We hold some events here, and we're looking for a founding engineer.
Nice. Fabulous. And how can people get a hold of you?
Twitter is probably the best way. You can also email me, jared@promptlayer.com.
Wonderful, Jared. Well, thank you very much for the conversation today.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you.